The morning sunlight filtered through my apartment window, dancing across the birthday cards I'd bought myself the night before. 25 years old today, and here I was, Sarah Matthews, sitting alone in my tiny Boston studio, staring at my phone and waiting for it to ring. You'd think after all these years, I'd have learned not to expect much from my family, but hope has this cruel way of lingering, doesn't it? Like a stubborn weed that keeps growing back no matter how many times you try to pull it out. I picked up my coffee mug, the one my boyfriend Jake had given me last Christmas with "World's Best Girlfriend" printed on it in cheerful letters, and took a sip of the now cold brew. The silence in my apartment felt heavier today, more oppressive somehow. Maybe because 25 felt like such a significant milestone, a quarter of a century lived, and I'd foolishly allowed myself to believe that this year might be different. My parents, Richard and Carol Matthews, had never been the type to shower me with affection. From the moment my younger sister Madison was born when I was 3, I'd been relegated to the shadows of our family dynamic. Madison, with her golden blonde curls and infectious laugh, had captured their hearts in a way I never could. While I struggled through middle school with braces and awkward growth spurts, Madison glided through life like she was born to be adored. And our parents? They were more than happy to oblige. I scrolled through my phone, looking at old family photos from happier times, or at least times when I was young enough to not understand the dynamics at play. There was one from Madison's Sweet 16, a lavish affair at the country club with a 3-tier cake and a DJ. My 21st birthday, by contrast, had been marked by a hurried dinner at a chain restaurant, cut short because Madison had a dance recital the next morning that required an early start. The family group chat sat stubbornly silent on my screen. I'd sent a message last week, just a casual reminder about my birthday, suggesting we could do brunch or dinner, whatever worked for everyone's schedule. The message had been read by all 3 of them, those little blue check marks mocking me with their confirmation that yes, they'd seen it, and no, they hadn't bothered to respond. I set my phone aside and padded to the bathroom, catching sight of myself in the mirror. Dark circles under my hazel eyes told the story of another restless night, wondering if this would finally be the year I stopped caring. My therapist, Dr. Chen, had been working with me on setting boundaries and managing expectations, but some wounds run so deep that even professional help feels like putting a Band-Aid on a broken bone. The shower helped wash away some of the melancholy, and by the time I dressed in my favorite jeans and the soft lavender sweater Jake had said brought out my eyes, I'd almost convinced myself that today would be fine. I had plans with Jake and his family for the evening, after all. The Andersons had welcomed me into their fold from the moment Jake first brought me home 3 years ago, treating me with a warmth and genuine interest that still sometimes caught me off guard. But first, I had to get through the day, and that meant addressing the elephant in the room, or rather, the silence from my phone. I picked it up again, my fingers hovering over the call button next to my mom's contact. Part of me wanted to just let it go, to see if they'd remember on their own. But the other part, the part that was still that little girl desperate for her parents' approval, needed to know where I stood. The phone rang twice before my mother's voice filled my ear, bright and cheerful in a way that immediately put me on edge. "Oh, Sarah, what a surprise. I was just thinking about you." Her voice had that particular quality it got when she was multitasking, probably scrolling through her iPad or organizing her purse while we talked. "Hi, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice light and casual. "I was just wondering if we're still on for tonight? For dinner?" There was a pause, just long enough for my heart to start its familiar descent into my stomach. "Tonight? Oh, honey, what's tonight?" The words hit me like a physical blow, even though part of me had been expecting them. "It's my birthday, Mom. My 25th birthday." "Oh!" She laughed, that tinkling sound that had once meant comfort but now just sounded hollow. "Of course it is. Oh, Sarah, I'm so sorry, but we have plans tonight. Madison has some incredible news, and we're taking her out to celebrate. You know how it is." I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tighter. "What news?" "She got promoted. Can you believe it? 22 years old and already a senior analyst at her firm. We're so proud. We're going to Beaumont's, you know. That new French place downtown that's impossible to get reservations for." Richard pulled some strings. Beaumont's. The same restaurant I'd suggested for my birthday dinner last month, only to be told it was too expensive and too much hassle. "That's great for Madison," I managed, my voice sounding strange even to my own ears. "We'll do something for you next week, sweetie. Maybe lunch? Although actually next week is quite busy. Madison has that charity gala, and I promised I'd help her shop for a dress. But soon, okay? We'll celebrate soon." In the background, I heard Madison's voice, bright and laughing. Is that Sarah? Tell her I said hi. Oh, and tell her about the promotion party next month. She should totally come if she's not busy. If I'm not busy. As if I ever had plans that mattered. As if my life was just a series of empty spaces waiting to be filled by their convenience. I should go, I said quietly, already knowing this conversation was over. Have fun tonight. Oh, we will. And Sarah, don't be so sensitive about these things. You know we love you just as much as Madison. It's just that she has so much going on right now, and you're doing fine, aren't you? With your little job and Jake, you're settled. Settled. Like I was a sediment at the bottom of a glass, something that had found its level and would never rise higher. My little job as a pediatric nurse, where I spent my days comforting sick children and supporting terrified parents, reduced to nothing more than a placeholder in her mind. Yeah, Mom, I'm settled. Good. Well, happy birthday, sweetheart. We'll talk soon. The line went dead before I could respond, leaving me standing in my living room, still in my birthday outfit, feeling more alone than I had when I'd woken up. I sank onto my secondhand couch, the one I'd bought from a graduating student when I first moved to Boston, and let the hurt wash over me. 25 years of this. 25 years of being the afterthought, the also-ran in my own family's story. I thought about all the times I'd made excuses for them. They were busy. Madison was younger and needed more attention. They were just different kinds of people who showed love differently. But the truth was simpler and more painful. They just didn't care enough. My phone buzzed, and for a wild moment, I thought maybe they'd reconsidered. Maybe Mom had hung up and immediately realized her mistake. Maybe Dad had overheard and insisted they include me. But no, it was Jake. Happy birthday, beautiful. Can't wait to see you tonight. Mom's making your favorite chocolate cake, and Dad's threatening to tell embarrassing stories about my childhood. Fair warning. Love you. I stared at the message, tears finally spilling over. Jake's family, who had known me for a fraction of the time my own family had, somehow managed to remember not just my birthday, but my favorite cake. His mom, Patricia, had asked me months ago, filing the information away for future reference. Because that's what people who care about you do. They pay attention. They make mental notes. They show up. I wiped my eyes and stood up, suddenly filled with a strange mixture of sadness and determination. I was done waiting for my family to see me, to value me, to love me the way I deserved to be loved. If they wanted to spend my birthday celebrating Madison's latest achievement, that was their choice. But I had choices too. I grabbed my purse and keys, deciding to treat myself to a birthday breakfast at my favorite cafe, one with the perfect pancakes and the friendly barista who always remembered my order. As I walked, I thought about Dr. Chen's words from our last session. You can't make people love you the way you need to be loved. You can only control how you respond to their choices. The cafe was warm and bustling with the Saturday morning crowd. I found a corner table and ordered my usual, adding a side of birthday confidence in the form of extra whipped cream on my pancakes. As I ate, I made a decision. I wasn't going to hide what had happened. I wasn't going to pretend everything was fine. If my family wanted to prioritize Madison's promotion over my birthday, that was their choice. But I wasn't going to make it easy for them to sweep it under the rug. I pulled out my phone and opened Instagram, looking at the carefully curated life my parents presented to the world. Their most recent post was from last week, a photo of the three of them at Madison's office, all smiles and pride. The caption read, "So proud of our baby girl. The sky's the limit for our Madison. Our Madison. Never our daughters. Never both of us. Just Madison." I thought about all the times I'd protected their image, made excuses for their behavior, kept quiet about the hurt they caused. I thought about the family friends who probably had no idea that Richard and Carol Matthews had 2 daughters, not just one. I thought about how tired I was of being complicit in my own erasure, but I wasn't ready to make that post yet. First, I had a birthday to salvage. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of small self-kindnesses. I bought myself flowers from the farmer's market, bright sunflowers that reminded me of happier times. I got my nails done in a bold red that my mother would have called too attention-seeking. I window shopped in my favorite bookstore, treating myself to a novel I'd been eyeing for weeks. By the time afternoon rolled around, I felt more like myself than I had in months. The hurt was still there, a dull ache in my chest, but it was manageable. I'd learned to carry hurt like a chronic condition, something that flared up occasionally but didn't have to define my days. Jake picked me up at 5, his face lighting up when he saw me. "There's my birthday girl," he said, pulling me into a warm hug that smelled like his cologne and something indefinably safe. You look beautiful. I feel good, I said, and was surprised to find I meant it. The drive to his parents' house in Cambridge was filled with easy conversation and his terrible singing along to the radio. Jake had this way of making everything feel lighter, like the world wasn't quite as heavy when he was around. He didn't know about the morning's phone call yet. I'd tell him later when we were alone. For now, I just wanted to bask in the simple pleasure of being with someone who chose me every day without hesitation. The Anderson house was a beautiful Victorian that Patricia had lovingly restored over the years. It was the kind of home that felt lived in and loved, with family photos covering every surface and the smell of something delicious always wafting from the kitchen. The moment we walked in, Patricia appeared, flower in her gray-streaked hair and a smile that could have powered the entire neighborhood. "Happy birthday, sweetheart!" She pulled me into a hug that was all warmth and genuine affection. 25. How does it feel? Like I should probably figure out what I'm doing with my life. I joked, but Patricia shook her head. Nonsense. You're exactly where you need to be. Now come on, dinner's almost ready, and Robert's been taste testing all afternoon. I may have to make another batch of mashed potatoes. Jake's father appeared in the doorway, looking properly chastised. In my defense, they're really good mashed potatoes. The easy banter, the warmth, the way they included me in their family rhythms without question, it was everything I'd always wanted and never had. We sat down to dinner, and I found myself actually laughing as Robert launched into a story about Jake's disastrous attempt to make breakfast in bed for Patricia's birthday when he was 10. "The smoke alarm went off 3 times, Robert said, gesturing dramatically with his fork. 3 times! The neighbors thought the house was on fire. I was trying to make French toast, Jake protested, his cheeks pink. How was I supposed to know you had to cook it on both sides? Because that's how cooking works, son, Robert said, and we all dissolved into laughter. As we ate, I noticed Patricia watching me with that gentle, perceptive way she had. She didn't say anything, but I could tell she sensed something was off. That was Patricia's superpower. She could read the emotional temperature of a room better than anyone I'd ever met. After dinner, as she brought out the cake, a gorgeous 3-layer chocolate creation that looked like it belonged in a magazine, she caught my eye and smiled. "Make a wish, Sarah. 25 is a powerful year. Good things are coming." I closed my eyes, thinking about what to wish for. In past years, I would have wished for my parents to finally see me, to love me the way they loved Madison. But this year, with the candles flickering in front of me and the warm presence of people who actually cared surrounding me, I wished for something different. I wished for the strength to let go of what wasn't meant for me and the wisdom to hold tight to what was. I blew out the candles to applause and cheers, and Jake squeezed my hand under the table. As Patricia cut generous slices of cake, my phone buzzed. I glanced at it, expecting maybe a belated birthday text from a coworker or friend. Instead, I saw a notification that made my heart skip a beat. Madison had tagged me in a photo on Instagram. With slightly shaking hands, I opened the app. There they were, my family, dressed to the nines at Beaumont's. Madison glowing in a designer dress I recognized as new, my parents flanking her with proud smiles. The caption read, "Celebrating my promotion with the best parents in the world. So blessed to have their support. Love you guys." And there, like an afterthought, was my tag. But I wasn't in the photo. I was just mentioned, like a footnote in their perfect family narrative. Something inside me snapped. I excused myself to the bathroom, my hands steady despite the storm raging inside me. I looked at myself in the mirror, at the woman I'd become despite their neglect, not because of their support. I thought about all the birthdays they'd missed or minimized, all the achievements they'd overlooked, all the times they'd chosen Madison over me without a second thought. I opened my camera roll and found the perfect photo. It was from earlier, at the cafe, a selfie I'd taken with my birthday pancakes. I looked happy, genuinely happy, chocolate chip smile and all. I opened Instagram and started typing. Turning 25 today and feeling grateful for chosen family. Thank you to everyone who made this day special, especially my amazing boyfriend Jake and his wonderful parents who made me a birthday dinner and cake. Sometimes the family you find is more precious than the family you're born into. Here's to another year of surrounding myself with people who show up, who remember, who care. #birthday chosen family, #grateful. I tagged Jake and his parents, then, after a moment's hesitation, I tagged the cafe too. Let my parents see that I'd spent my birthday morning alone, treating myself to breakfast because they couldn't be bothered to remember. I hit post and tucked my phone away, returning to the dinner table with a smile that felt more real than it had all day. The conversation continued around me, warm and inclusive, and I let myself sink into it. My phone buzzed several times in my pocket, but I ignored it. Whatever was happening in the digital world could wait. Right now, I was exactly where I wanted to be. It wasn't until we were driving back to my apartment that I finally looked at my phone. The notifications were overwhelming. Comments, likes, messages, but the ones that stood out were from my parents. Mom had called 6 times, Dad 3 times. There were text messages too, growing increasingly frantic. "Sarah, what is this post? Call me immediately." "This is inappropriate. Take it down." "You're embarrassing us. This is not how we raised you. Call me now." I showed Jake the messages and his jaw tightened. "Are you kidding me? They forgot your birthday to celebrate Madison's promotion, and they're mad at you?" "They're not mad. I'm hurt," I said quietly. "They're mad I made it public." Jake pulled into a parking space near my apartment and turned to face me fully. "What do you want to do?" It was such a simple question, but it meant everything. He wasn't telling me what to do, wasn't trying to manage the situation. He was asking what I wanted, what I needed. It was so different from how my family operated that it took my breath away. "I think I want to call them back," I said. "But not alone. Will you stay with me?" "Always," he said without hesitation. We went up to my apartment and I sat on the couch, Jake beside me, as I dialed my mother's number. She picked up on the first ring. "Sarah Elizabeth Matthews, what were you thinking?" Her voice was shrill, panicked. "Do you have any idea how this looks? Aunt Linda already called asking if we're having family problems. This is mortifying." "Hi, Mom," I said calmly. "Did you have a nice dinner?" "Don't you dare," she hissed. "Don't you dare act like you're the victim here. We told you we'd celebrate next week." "No," I corrected. "You said maybe lunch, but then remembered Madison has a charity gala to shop for, so really, you had no intention of celebrating with me at all." "That's not, you're twisting things. You've always been so sensitive, Sarah. Not everything is about you." I laughed, actually laughed, and I could hear her sharp intake of breath. "You're right, Mom. Not everything is about me. In fact, in this family, nothing is ever about me. It's always about Madison, her achievements, her needs, her schedule. I'm just the backdrop to her starring role." "How dare you?" "I'm not done," I interrupted, my voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. "Do you know what Jake's mom made me for my birthday? A 3-layer chocolate cake from scratch. She remembered from a casual conversation months ago that it was my favorite. You've been my mother for 25 years, and you couldn't even remember the day I was born." "We remembered," she protested. "I told you happy birthday on the phone." "After I reminded you," I shot back. "And then you immediately told me you were too busy celebrating Madison to see me. Do you have any idea how that feels? To be constantly reminded that you're not worth your own parents' time?" "You're being dramatic," she said, but her voice had lost some of its edge. "We love both our daughters equally." "No," I said simply. "You don't, and I'm tired of pretending otherwise. I've spent years making myself smaller, accepting scraps of attention, watching you lavish Madison with everything while I stood in the shadows. I'm done." "What do you mean, you're done?" Now there was worry in her voice. "Sarah, you're our daughter. You can't just—" "I can, actually," I said. "I can choose to stop begging for love that should be freely given. I can choose to surround myself with people who value me. I can This is every milestone of mine that you missed because Madison had something going on. Every achievement that got a pat on the head while hers got a party. Every single time you made it clear that I was optional while she was essential." The line was quiet for a moment. Then my father's voice came on, gruff and annoyed. "Sarah, this is ridiculous. Take down the post and stop making a scene." "No." "Excuse me?" I said, "No, Dad, I'm not taking it down. I'm not apologizing for having feelings. I'm not pretending anymore that this is okay." "You ungrateful little—" He caught himself, but the damage was done. "We gave you everything. We raised you, educated you, supported you." "You gave me the bare minimum," I corrected. "You did what you were legally required to do. But emotional support, love, attention, those were reserved, Maud, for Madison." "If you don't take down that post," he threatened, "there will be consequences." I felt Jake's hand find mine, steady and warm. "Like what, Dad? You'll cut me off? Stop inviting me to family events? Oh, wait, you already don't include me. You'll write me out of your will? Go ahead. I don't want your money. I want parents who love me, and clearly that's too much to ask for." "You're going to regret this," he said coldly. Family is forever, Sarah. You don't just walk away from family. You walked away from me first, I said, and my voice broke just a little. Every time you chose her over me, you walked away. I'm just finally accepting it. I hung up before either of them could respond. My hands were shaking, but I felt strangely light, like I'd set down a weight I'd been carrying for so long, I'd forgotten it wasn't part of me. Jake pulled me into his arms, and I let myself cry. Not the bitter tears of rejection, but the cleansing tears of release. I'd said everything I'd needed to say. I'd stood up for the little girl who had spent too many birthdays wondering why she wasn't enough. I'd chosen myself, finally, after years of waiting to be chosen by them. My phone continued to buzz with messages, but I ignored them all. Instead, I curled into Jake's embrace and let myself feel the truth of what had just happened. I'd drawn a line in the sand. I'd set a boundary. I'd chosen my own worth over their conditional love. I'm proud of you, Jake whispered into my hair. That took incredible courage. I don't feel brave, I admitted. I feel scared. What if they never speak to me again? Then they'll miss out on knowing an amazing woman, he said simply. Their loss, not yours. We ordered Chinese food and watched old episodes of The Office, and slowly, the tightness in my chest began to ease. My phone had finally stopped buzzing, and I felt like I could breathe for the first time all day. This wasn't the birthday I'd planned, but maybe it was the birthday I needed. The day I finally stopped accepting less than I deserved. Around 11, there was a knock at my door. Jake and I exchanged glances. My building had a security door, so whoever it was had been buzzed in by another resident. My heart hammered as I approached the door, half expecting to see my parents in the hallway. Instead, when I looked through the peephole, I saw Madison. She looked smaller than usual, dressed down in jeans and a college sweatshirt, her usually perfect hair pulled back in a messy bun. She was alone, shifting nervously from foot to foot. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. Madison. Hi, she said, her voice uncharacteristically quiet. Can I come in? I hesitated, then stepped aside. She entered my apartment, taking in the modest space with curious eyes. It occurred to me that this was the first time she'd ever been here. In the 3 years I'd lived in Boston, she'd never once visited. Mom and Dad are really upset, she said without preamble. I'm aware. She fidgeted with her phone, not quite meeting my eyes. They want me to talk to you, to convince you to take down the post. And is that why you're here, to do their bidding? She flinched at my tone. No, maybe. I don't know. She finally looked at me directly, and I was surprised to see genuine confusion in her eyes. Sarah, what happened? They said you're being dramatic, but what? But you're not the dramatic one, she said quietly. You're the one who never complains, who always goes along with everything. So if you're this upset, something must be really wrong. I studied my sister, trying to reconcile this thoughtful person with the golden child who had dominated our family dynamic for over 2 decades. They forgot my birthday, Madison. Not just forgot to plan something special. They literally forgot it was my birthday until I called to remind them. And when I did, they told me they were too busy celebrating your promotion to see me. She winced. I didn't know. About your birthday, I mean. They just said we were going to dinner to celebrate my promotion. Of course you didn't know, I said tiredly. Why would they mention it? It's just my birthday. Not like it matters. That's not fair, she protested. Isn't it? I challenged. When's my birthday, Madison? She opened her mouth, then closed it, her cheeks flushing. October? November 15th, I corrected. Today. When's yours? You know when mine is, she said defensively. March 22nd, I recited. You'll be 23. You like vanilla cake with strawberry filling. You always want to go somewhere with live music, and you insist on wearing a tiara, even though you pretend it's ironic. Her eyes filled with tears. Sarah, I know everything about you because I've paid attention your whole life, I continued. Because I love you, even when it hurts to watch them love you more. But you don't even know what month I was born in. I didn't realize. She sank onto my couch, looking lost. They really do treat us differently, don't they? It was the first time she'd ever acknowledged it out loud, and something in my chest cracked open. Yeah, Mads, they really do. I thought you didn't mind, she said quietly. You never said anything. You always seemed so settled. There was that word again, settled. I minded. I just learned early on that saying something didn't change anything. It just made them defensive and made me look petty, so I stopped trying. Until today. Until today, I agreed. We sat in silence for a moment. Jake had retreated to my bedroom, giving us privacy, but I could feel his supportive presence nearby. "They're talking about cutting you off," Madison said finally. "Dad's really angry. He keeps saying you're ungrateful and disrespectful." "I know. Doesn't that scare you?" I thought about it. It should, probably, but honestly, they cut me off emotionally years ago. The financial stuff, I've been supporting myself since college anyway. I never expected their help. "I didn't know that either," she said, looking genuinely troubled. "They paid for everything for me. Tuition, apartment, even my car." "I know," I said simply. "I was there when they bought it for you. Red Mini Cooper for your 18th birthday. You cried, you were so happy." "What did you get for your 18th?" "A card," I said. "And dinner at Applebee's. They had a coupon." Madison's face crumpled. "Oh my God, Sarah, I'm so sorry. I'm so, so sorry." "It's not your fault," I said, and meant it. "You were a kid. You didn't create this dynamic, they did." "But I benefited from it," she said through tears. "And I never questioned it. I just accepted it, like I deserved it somehow." "You were their baby," I said. "Their golden girl. Why would you question it?" "Because you're my sister," she said fiercely. "And I should have noticed. I should have cared." We talked for another hour, really talked, in a way we never had before. She told me about the pressure she felt to be perfect, to live up to their expectations. I told her about the loneliness of always being on the outside looking in. It wasn't a magical reconciliation. Too much had happened for that. But it was a start. When she finally stood to leave, she paused at the door. "I'm not going to try to convince you to take down the post," she said. "You have every right to speak your truth. But Sarah, I want you to know that I see you. Maybe for the first time, but I see you, and I'm going to do better." After she left, I sat in the quiet of my apartment, processing everything that had happened. In 12 hours, I'd gone from hopeful to heartbroken to empowered to exhausted. But underneath it all, I felt something new. Free. Jake emerged from the bedroom, wrapping me in a gentle hug. "How are you doing?" "I honestly don't know," I admitted. "But I think that's okay. I think I'm allowed to not know for a while." The next few days were a whirlwind. My post had gained more traction than I'd expected, with friends and acquaintances reaching out with their own stories of family favoritism and neglect. My parents tried calling several more times, but I didn't answer. I needed space to figure out what I wanted, what boundaries I needed to set. Dr. Chen was proud of me when I told her what had happened. "You advocated for yourself," she said with a warm smile. "That's huge, Sarah. How does it feel?" "Terrifying," I said honestly, "but also liberating, like I've been holding my breath for 25 years and I'm finally allowed to exhale." A week passed, then two. The calls from my parents stopped, replaced by an ominous silence. Madison texted occasionally, small things, a funny meme, a question about a recipe, a picture of a sunset, baby steps toward a relationship that wasn't built on our parents' dysfunction. Then, 3 weeks after my birthday, my father showed up at my work. I was just finishing my shift at the children's hospital, exhausted from a day of flu shots and worried parents, when I saw him in the lobby. He looked older than I remembered, his usually perfect hair slightly disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled. "Sarah," he said when he saw me, "we need to talk." I glanced around at my coworkers, not wanting to make a scene. "Not here. There's a coffee shop across the street." We walked in silence, the December air sharp and cold. The coffee shop was nearly empty, and we found a corner table away from the few other patrons. I ordered a tea I didn't want, just to have something to do with my hands. "Your mother doesn't know I'm here," he said without preamble. That surprised me. My parents operated as a unit, always presenting a united front. "Why not?" he sighed, looking every one of his 57 years. "Because she's too proud to admit she's wrong. And because I needed to do this alone." I waited, not making it easy for him. I had spent too many years filling the silences, smoothing over the awkward moments. Not anymore. "I remember when you were born," he said suddenly. "You were so small, so perfect. I was terrified. I'd never held a baby before. The nurse had to show me how to support your head." He smiled at the memory, then the smile faded. I don't know when we lost our way with you, Sarah, but we did. I did. When Madison was born, I said quietly. That's when. He nodded slowly. Maybe. She was easier somehow. You were so independent, even as a toddler. You'd play by yourself for hours, never demanding attention. Madison was different. She needed us constantly, and I think we got so used to you not needing us that we forgot you still wanted us. I did need you, I said, my throat tight. I just learned early that needing you didn't mean I'd get you. He flinched as if I'd slapped him. I'm sorry. I know that's not enough, but I'm sorry. When I saw your post, I was angry, embarrassed. How dare you air our family business? I thought, but then I couldn't stop thinking about it. About all the birthdays, all the moments we missed, your college graduation. We were late because Madison had a dance recital. Your nursing pinning ceremony. We left early because Madison had a date. Your first apartment. We never even saw it, did we? No, I confirmed. You didn't. I've been a terrible father to you, he said, and his voice broke. I let your mother drive the ship, and I never questioned where we were going. I see that now. I see what we did to you. What do you want from me, Dad? I asked, suddenly exhausted. Absolution? Forgiveness? Can't just pretend the last 25 years didn't happen. I know, he said quickly. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking for a chance to do better, to be better, to actually be your father, not just someone who shares your DNA. I studied him, looking for the angle, the manipulation, but all I saw was a man who looked genuinely broken by the realization of what he'd lost. What about Mom? I asked. He sighed. Your mother is complicated. She loves you in her way. But she's also deeply invested in the image we've cultivated. The perfect family with the perfect daughter. Acknowledging that we failed you means acknowledging that image is a lie. She's not ready for that yet. And Madison? Madison, he said with a small smile. Read us the riot act after she left your apartment. I've never seen her so angry. She told us we were horrible parents and that she was ashamed of us. Then she refused to come to Sunday dinner unless you were invited too. That shocked me. Madison had always been conflict averse, happy to float along in the bubble of privilege our parents had created for her. She meant it too, he continued. Hasn't been to the house in 3 weeks. Your mother is beside herself. I couldn't help the small smile that tugged at my lips. Good for Madison. I can't promise your mother will come around, Dad said, but I want to try to rebuild something with you, if you'll let me. I thought about Dr. Orr, Chen's words about boundaries, about choosing what relationships to invest in. I need time, I said finally. And I need to know this is real, not just a temporary guilt response. I can't handle getting my hopes up again only to be disappointed. I understand, he said. Whatever you need, whatever pace works for you. We parted with an awkward hug, the first real physical affection I'd received from him in years. As I watched him walk away, I felt a tiny seed of hope plant itself in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, something good could grow from all this pain. Jake was waiting for me when I got home, dinner already cooking on the stove. I told him about the conversation with my father, and he listened without judgment, asking thoughtful questions and offering support without trying to fix everything. Do you think he means it? He asked as we ate. I don't know, I admitted. But I think I want to find out. Carefully, with boundaries, but yeah, I want to try. The journey wasn't easy. Family therapy with my father, stilted coffee dates that gradually became less awkward, small steps towards something resembling a relationship. My mother remained stubborn, clinging to her narrative that I was the ungrateful daughter who had betrayed the family. But slowly, things shifted. Madison and I grew closer than we'd ever been, bonding over shared experiences and inside jokes that had nothing to do with our parents. She started coming to my apartment regularly, bringing takeout and stories from her job that made us both laugh until our sides hurt. For the first time, I had a sister, not just a sibling. My father followed through on his promises, showing up when he said he would, asking about my life with genuine interest, learning who I was as a person rather than just as his disappointment of a daughter. It wasn't perfect. There were setbacks and arguments and old patterns that tried to reassert themselves. But it was progress. 6 months after my 25th birthday, I celebrated 26 quietly, with Jake's family and a handful of close friends. My father came, bringing a photo album he'd put together of my childhood. moments I didn't even remember captured in fading photographs. Madison baked a cake from scratch. It was lopsided and slightly burned on one edge, but it was perfect because she'd tried. My mother didn't come, but she sent a card. Inside, in her perfect handwriting, she'd written, "Happy birthday, Sarah. I'm not ready yet, but I'm working on it. Love, Mom." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't enough, but it was something. As I blew out my candles, surrounded by people who chose to be there, who saw me and valued me and loved me, not despite my flaws, but because of my whole self, I realized something profound. I had spent so long trying to earn love that was supposed to be unconditional that I'd missed all the conditional love being offered freely by people who just wanted me to be happy. The family you're born into shapes you, but it doesn't have to define you. Sometimes the greatest act of love you can show yourself is refusing to accept less than you deserve. Sometimes standing up for yourself means standing alone, at least for a while. But if you're lucky, you find that you're not really alone at all. You're just finally free to see all the people who are waiting to catch you when you finally let yourself fall. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. "Movie night Friday? I'm making popcorn with that seasoning you like." I smiled, typing back quickly, "Wouldn't miss it." Family is complicated. Love is complicated. But choosing yourself, that's simple. It's just not always easy. But then again, the best things rarely are. As Jake wrapped his arms around me from behind, pressing a kiss to my temple, I thought about that scared girl sitting alone on her birthday morning, waiting for a call that almost didn't come. I wanted to tell her it would be okay, that the pain would transform into power, that she would find her voice and use it, that she would discover family in unexpected places and learn that blood doesn't always mean loyalty. But she'd figure it out on her own, in her own time, just like I did. And that journey, painful and beautiful and utterly transformative, made all the difference. "What are you thinking about?" Jake asked softly. "How different everything is now," I said. "How different I am." "Good different?" I turned in his arms, meeting his eyes. "The best different." And it was, because I had finally learned the most important lesson of all. You can't make people love you the way you need to be loved. You can't earn something that should be freely given. But you can choose to love yourself enough to demand better. You can choose to walk away from tables where respect isn't served. You can choose to build your own family, one genuine connection at a time. And that choice? That's where your real story begins. The weeks that followed my 26th birthday brought unexpected changes. My mother's card had opened a door I wasn't sure I wanted to walk through, but curiosity and that persistent hope I could never quite shake eventually won out. It started with text messages, brief, almost formal exchanges about the weather, safe topics that didn't venture near the minefield of our relationship. "The azaleas are blooming early this year," she'd write. "That's nice. Spring is beautiful in Boston, too," I'd respond. Back and forth, like strangers making small talk, which I suppose we were in many ways. We'd been mother and daughter in title, but the substance of that relationship had been missing for so long that we had to start from scratch. Jake watched me navigate these tentative communications with the patience of a saint. Some nights I'd show him the messages, analyzing them like ancient texts, looking for hidden meanings or signs of manipulation. Other nights, I'd toss my phone aside in frustration, tired of the emotional labor required to rebuild something that should never have been broken in the first place. "You don't owe her anything," he reminded me one evening as I sat cross-legged on our bed. We'd moved in together 3 months after my birthday confrontation, another step toward building the life I wanted rather than the one I'd been given. I know, our relationship had become one of the unexpected gifts of this whole painful process. Without our parents' toxic dynamic between us, we'd discovered we actually liked each other. We were sitting, I told, it was this quiet, Mom pretends not to notice, but she does. The image of that empty place setting hit me harder than I expected. I thought about my father, stubbornly maintaining hope that I'd walk through the door, and my mother too proud to acknowledge what she'd lost. "She could reach out," I said, hearing the hurt in my own voice. "She has my number." "She could," Madison agreed. "But you know Mom. She's never admitted she was wrong about anything in her entire life. It's breaking her worldview, Sarah. The perfect mother with the perfect family. She built her whole identity around that. And I ruined it by existing inconveniently," I said bitterly. "No," Madison said firmly. "You ruined it by finally demanding to be seen. There's a difference. And for what it's worth, I'm glad you did. It needed to be ruined." That night, I found myself composing and deleting text messages to my mother. Nothing felt right. Too formal, too casual, too angry, too forgiving. Finally, I settled on something simple. Madison says the azaleas are beautiful this year. I remember planting them with you when I was 7. You let me pick the colors. I hit send before I could overthink it more, then immediately wanted to take it back. But it was done. The ball was in her court now. She didn't respond for 3 days. When she finally did, it was with a photo of the azalea bushes in full bloom and the words, "You chose well. You always did have an eye for beautiful things." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't an admission of wrongdoing. But it was a memory acknowledged, a moment from my childhood that mattered enough for her to document. Baby steps. Our correspondence continued like that for weeks. Careful messages that danced around the edges of real conversation. She'd share a recipe she thought I might like. I'd send a photo from a hike Jake and I took. We were building something new, brick by careful brick, but I wasn't sure what it would look like when we were done. The test came in May when Madison graduated from her MBA program. It was a big deal. She'd worked hard, balancing her job with night classes, and she deserved to be celebrated. The question was whether I could celebrate with the family without sacrificing my hard-won boundaries. "I want you there," Madison said when she called to invite me personally. "Not because Mom and Dad say so, but because you're my sister and this is important to me." "Will it be the full Matthews family show?" I asked, remembering countless events where I'd been relegated to the background while Madison starred. "No," she promised. "I've made it clear. This is my day, and I want it to include everyone who matters to me. That means you and Jake. If Mom can't handle that respectfully, she's welcome to stay home." The ultimatum shocked me. Madison had never stood up to our mother like that before. "Did you really tell her that?" "Word for word. You should have seen her face." Madison laughed, but it was tinged with sadness. "I think she's starting to realize that her choices have consequences, that she can't treat you like furniture and expect you to stick around." And she agreed? She did. Dad may have had something to do with that. He's been different lately. He told her that if she missed my graduation because she couldn't be civil to you, he'd never forgive her. The graduation day arrived with unseasonable heat and cloudless skies. I changed my outfit 3 times, much to Jake's amusement, before settling on a simple sundress that was professional but not trying too hard. My hands shook as I applied mascara, and I had to redo it twice. "You don't have to do this," Jake reminded me as we drove to the venue. "Madison would understand if you changed your mind." "I know," I said, smoothing my dress unnecessarily. "But I want to be there for her, and maybe I need to see if we can all exist in the same space without imploding." The ceremony was held in a beautiful auditorium at the university. We arrived early, choosing seats that gave us a good view, but also an easy escape route if needed. I spotted my parents across the aisle, Dad in his best suit, Mom in a dress I recognized as new. She looked older somehow, or maybe I was just seeing her more clearly now. Our eyes met across the space. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Then she gave a small nod. Acknowledgement, not warmth, but it was something. I nodded back. The ceremony was long, as graduations tend to be, but when Madison walked across that stage, I cheered as loudly as anyone. She'd worked hard for this, and I was genuinely proud of her. When she spotted us in the crowd, her face lit up, and she waved enthusiastically, nearly tripping over her gown in the process. Even my mother smiled at that. Afterward, we gathered in the courtyard for pictures. The photographer, hired by my parents naturally, tried to arrange us in various combinations. "Now, just the immediate family," he said, gesturing for Jake to step aside. "He is immediate family," I said firmly, keeping Jake's hand in mine. The photographer looked confused, glancing between us and my parents. My mother's jaw tightened, but before she could speak, Madison intervened. "Everyone I love is my immediate family," she said brightly, pulling Jake and me closer. "Take the picture, please." We smiled for the camera, this new version of our family that included chosen bonds alongside blood. It wasn't perfect. I could feel the tension radiating from my mother, but it was real. At the reception afterward, held at a nice restaurant downtown, the seating arrangement spoke volumes. Madison had placed me and Jake at the main table, directly across from our parents. No kids' table treatment, no being shuffled to the side. We were right there in the middle of everything, impossible to ignore. Dinner conversation was stilted at first. We talked about safe topics, the weather, Madison's job prospects, Jake's recent promotion. But as the wine flowed and the evening progressed, something shifted. My mother, perhaps emboldened by her second glass of champagne, looked directly at me for the first time all day. "Your dress is lovely, Sarah," she said. "That color suits you." It was such a normal, motherly thing to say that it caught me off guard. "Thank you," I managed. "You look nice too." She smiled, a real smile, not the practiced society one I was used to. I wasn't sure what to wear. Everything felt wrong somehow, like I was dressing for a play where I'd forgotten my lines. The honesty in her voice surprised everyone at the table. My father reached over and took her hand, squeezing gently. Madison and I exchanged glances, both unsure how to respond to this unprecedented vulnerability from our mother. "I know the feeling," I said finally. "I changed 3 times this morning." "Did you?" She seemed genuinely interested. "What were the other options?" And just like that, we were having a conversation. Not a confrontation, not a negotiation, just talking. About clothes and choices and the anxiety of not knowing what role you're supposed to play. It was perhaps the most authentic exchange we'd had in years. As the evening wore on, I watched my mother interact with Jake, really seeing him for the first time. She asked about his work, his family, his interests. When he mentioned his love of cooking, she lit up. "Sarah never liked to cook," she said, then caught herself. "Or maybe I never taught her properly. I was always so busy with Madison." I finished gently. "It's okay to say it." She looked at me with something like wonder. "How are you so calm about it now? I spent months furious at you for that post, for exposing us. But you were just telling the truth, weren't you?" "I was," I confirmed. "And I'm calm now because I've had time to process it, to understand that your choices were about you, not about my worth." "I did love you," she said suddenly, urgently. "I do love you. I didn't know how to love 2 such different children. Madison was like me, outgoing, eager to please, easy to understand. You were, you were your own person from the start, independent, thoughtful. You didn't need me the way she did." "I did need you," I said, feeling Jake's supportive hand on my knee under the table. "I just learned to stop showing it because needing you meant getting hurt." Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment I thought she might break down completely. But she composed herself, dabbing carefully at her eyes with her napkin. "I'm sorry," she said, the words seeming to physically pain her. "I'm so sorry. I don't know how to fix it. I don't know if it can be fixed." "Maybe it can't be fixed," I said honestly. "Maybe we can't repair what was broken, but maybe we can build something new." She nodded, hope and fear warring in her expression. "I'd like that, if you're willing. I know I don't deserve it, but I'd like to try." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of toasts and cake and dancing. Madison pulled me onto the dance floor, spinning me around until we were both dizzy and laughing. Even my parents danced, looking more relaxed than I'd seen them in years. Jake charmed everyone with his terrible dance moves and genuine warmth. As we prepared to leave, my mother pulled me aside. "Sarah, I wanted to ask, your birthday is coming up, isn't it? November?" I smiled, touched that she was trying to remember. "It is, November 15th. Would you, could we perhaps do something? All of us? Only if you're comfortable, of course. I understand if you'd rather. Let me think about it," I said, not ready to commit but not wanting to shut down her effort either. "We have time." She nodded eagerly. "Of course. Take all the time you need. I'm just grateful you're even considering it." As Jake and I drove home, I felt emotionally wrung out but strangely hopeful. Change was possible, apparently, even in the most entrenched dynamics. It wouldn't be easy or quick, but maybe, just maybe, we could forge something new from the ashes of what had been. "You did amazing today," Jake said, bringing my hand to his lips for a kiss. "I'm so proud of you." "I didn't do anything special," I protested. "Just showed up and tried to be present." "Sometimes that's the hardest thing of all," he said wisely. Summer passed in a blur of work and weekend trips and tentative family dinners. Not every interaction was successful. There were still moments of tension, old patterns trying to reassert themselves. But there were also moments of genuine connection, glimpses of what we might become if we all kept trying. My father and I developed a tradition of monthly lunches, just the two of us, where we talked about everything and nothing. He shared stories from my childhood I'd never heard, filling in gaps in my memory with his perspective. I learned that he'd been the one to rock me to sleep every night until I was 2, that he'd taught me to ride a bike in secret after Mom had declared me too young, that he'd kept every art project I'd ever made in a box in his office. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" I asked one day over sandwiches at our favorite deli. He looked ashamed. "Because acknowledging the good memories meant acknowledging how many more we should have had. It was easier to let your mother drive and pretend I didn't see the road we were on. And now? Now I'm trying to be the father I should have been all along," he said simply, "even if it's 20 years too late." Madison and I grew even closer, our relationship evolving from mere sisters to genuine friends. She started dating someone new, a kind-hearted teacher named David who treated her like an equal partner rather than a prize to be won. Watching her navigate a healthy relationship made me appreciate Jake even more. "I used to think love meant being the center of someone's universe," she told me one night over wine and pizza at my apartment. "Mom and Dad made me feel like that was normal, you know? Like I should expect everyone to drop everything for me. David's teaching me that real love is quieter than that. It's showing up consistently, not grandly." "Jake taught me that too," I said, smiling at the thought of my steadfast partner. "It's not about being chosen over everyone else. It's about being chosen every day in 1,000 small ways." "We're pretty lucky, aren't we?" she mused, "to have found them despite our messed up model for relationships." "The luckiest," I agreed, clinking my glass against hers. As my birthday approached, I found myself actually considering my mother's request for a family celebration. The thought still made me anxious, but it was a different kind of anxiety now, less about self-protection and more about hope management. "What do you want to do?" Patricia asked during one of our regular coffee dates. She'd become like a second mother to me, offering wisdom and support without overstepping. "Not what you think you should do, but what you actually want." I thought about it, really considered what would make me happy. "I want to feel celebrated," I said finally, "not tolerated or squeezed in around Madison's schedule. I want to feel like my birthday matters." "Then tell them that," she encouraged. "Set the terms. You hold the power here, sweetheart. Use it wisely." So I did. I sent a carefully worded email to my parents, with Madison and Jake CC'd for moral support. I told them I was willing to have a birthday dinner, but I had conditions. It would be at a restaurant of my choosing. There would be no talk of Madison's achievements or anyone else's news. This was my day. Everyone would arrive on time and stay for the entire meal. And if at any point I felt disrespected or diminished, I would leave, and that would be the end of any attempts at family celebrations. My mother called within minutes of receiving the email. "Of course," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Whatever you need. We'll be there. Thank you for giving us this chance." The restaurant I chose was a cozy Italian place in my neighborhood, somewhere I felt comfortable and confident. Jake and I arrived first, claiming a table in the back corner where I could see everyone coming and going. Madison and David came next, bearing a small wrapped gift and matching nervous smiles. My parents arrived exactly on time, my father carrying a bouquet of sunflowers, my favorite, though I couldn't remember ever telling them that. They must have asked Madison or noticed the flowers I bought myself. The effort touched me more than I expected. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," my father said, kissing my cheek. 27 looks good on you." My mother hung back slightly, uncertain. I made the first move, giving her a brief hug that seemed to surprise us both. "Thank you for coming," I said, meaning it. Dinner was lovely. There's no other word for it. My parents asked about my work, seeming genuinely interested in my stories from the hospital. They laughed at Jake's jokes, included David in the conversation naturally, and not once did anyone shift the spotlight to Madison. When the waiter brought out a small cake with candles, my mother was the first to start singing, her voice strong and clear. As I blew out the candles, I didn't wish for my family to change or for old hurts to disappear. Instead, I wished for continued courage to keep showing up, to keep trying, to keep believing that people could grow and change and choose to do better. "Thank you," I said, looking around the table at these people who were trying so hard to be what I needed. "This is perfect." "You deserve perfect," my mother said softly. "You always did. I'm sorry it took me so long to see that." We didn't stay out late, baby steps after all. But as we prepared to leave, my mother handed me a card. "Read this later," she said, "when you're ready." At home, curled up with Jake on the couch, I opened the card. Inside, in my mother's careful handwriting, was a letter. Not a Hallmark sentiment, but a real letter, pages long, detailing her memories of my childhood, her regrets, her hopes for our future. She wrote about her own childhood, about the pressure to be perfect, about how she'd projected her fears onto Madison and her disappointments onto me. She wrote about therapy, about hard truths, about the work she was doing to become someone worthy of both her daughters. I don't expect forgiveness, the letter concluded. I haven't earned it, but I hope someday to earn your trust again, to be the mother you deserved from the start. I love you, Sarah. I've always loved you. I just lost sight of how to show it. Thank you for helping me find my way back. I cried then, really cried, grieving for the little girl who had needed to hear those words so desperately and celebrating the woman who was finally receiving them. Jake held me through it all. This man who had shown me what unconditional love looked like and given me the strength to demand it from others. Do you think people can really change? I asked him when the tears had subsided. I think people can choose to change, he said thoughtfully. When the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of growing. Your mom hit that point. That's huge. He was right. It was huge. And while I couldn't erase the past or pretend the scars weren't there, I could choose to move forward with hope instead of bitterness. I could choose to let my family evolve, to become something new, and maybe even beautiful. The journey continued, as journeys do. There were setbacks, holidays that triggered old dynamics, moments when my mother's favoritism slipped through despite her best efforts, times when I had to enforce boundaries firmly and without apology. But there was also progress. Family dinners where I felt genuinely included, shopping trips with my mother where we laughed like friends, group texts that included me naturally, not as an afterthought. Most surprisingly, my mother began to see me clearly for the first time. She noticed things: how I calmed crying children at work, how I remembered everyone's coffee order, how I could make Jake laugh when he'd had a hard day. She started introducing me differently at social events. Instead of our oldest daughter, I became Sarah, the pediatric nurse, or Sarah, who has such a gift with children, or simply Sarah, whom we're so proud of. I'm sorry it took me so long to see you, she said one day over lunch, just the two of us. You were right there all along, being extraordinary, and I missed it because I was too focused on my own expectations. We can't change the past, I said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. But we're here now. That matters. And it did matter. Every hard conversation, every moment of vulnerability, every choice to show up despite the fear. It all mattered. Because families aren't just born, they're made. They're built through daily choices, through forgiveness and boundaries, through the decision to keep trying, even when it would be easier to walk away. As I write this, it's been 2 years since that fateful 25th birthday. 2 years of therapy and growth and sometimes painful change. My family doesn't look like a Hallmark movie. We're too scarred for that, too aware of how badly we can hurt each other. But we're real. We're trying. We're choosing each other, imperfectly but intentionally. Jake and I are engaged now, planning a wedding that will blend our chosen and biological families into something new. My mother and Patricia have become friendly, bonding over their shared love of gardening and their mutual investment in my happiness. My father walks me through the neighborhood where I grew up, pointing out memories he wishes he'd shared sooner. Madison and I text every day, sharing memes and worries and dreams with the ease of sisters who genuinely like each other. It's not the family I dreamed of as a child, but in many ways, it's better. Because this family was fought for, was chosen, was built through conscious effort and genuine change. This family knows what it's like to almost lose each other and has decided that's not acceptable. The little girl who sat alone on her birthday, wondering why she wasn't enough, still lives inside me. Some days she's louder than others, reminding me of old hurts and warning me not to trust too much. But she's not in charge anymore. The woman that speaks, you deserve, if that, it's full, I'm still walking that road, still learning, still growing, still sometimes struggling with old patterns and new challenges. But I'm not walking alone anymore. I have Jake beside me, steady and sure. I have the Andersons, who showed me what family could be. I have Madison, my sister and friend. I have my parents, imperfect but trying. And most importantly, I have myself, whole and worthy, and finally, beautifully, unapologetically seen. And that's worth every difficult conversation, every tearful night, every moment of uncertainty. Because on the other side of pain is possibility. On the other side of fear is freedom. And on the other side of finally speaking your truth is a life that's authentically, genuinely, magnificently yours.